Night had fallen across the colony, the pale moons casting silver light over the jagged rocks. The market had gone quiet, the people hiding in their homes, whispering stories of the human who stood against the white fang. But Lyra did not care. About their whispers, her mind was heavy with questions, her heart restless with thoughts she could not silence. She led Eric away from the colony walls, into the wide-open plains where the wind howled like a living thing. The white fang followed, silent and watchful, its glowing eyes cutting through the dark. Eric walked calmly beside them, his steps steady, his armor catching the moonlight. He did not ask where they were going, and that silence only deepened Lyra's curiosity. At last she stopped near the ruins of an old stone tower, half buried. In the dirt, her glowing eyes scanned the horizon before settling on him. "You want to know the truth of this beast," she said quietly, her hand brushing against the thick fur of the white fang. Eric nodded once, his expression calm. His voice steady. "Yes," he replied. "I want to understand." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you will hear it," she said, her voice carrying the weight of memory. She looked at the white fang, and for a moment her fierce expression softened. "When I was a child," she began, "my people called this creature the shadow of death. They hunted it, they feared it, they swore that killing one would bring honor to their names." Her voice grew quiet, almost trembling. "But one night, in the storm season, when the skies burned with fire and the ground split with lightning, I was left alone, abandoned." Eric's eyes darkened, his body leaning slightly forward, listening. Lyra's fingers tightened in the beast's fur as she spoke. "The storm tore through our village. Beasts prowled the edges, and I was just a child. I should have died," she whispered, her glowing eyes dimming at the memory. "But then he found me." The white fang rumbled softly, lowering its head against her side. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Bittersweet and fragile. He could have torn me apart in an instant," she continued. "But instead, he stood over me. He shielded me from the storm, from the fire, from the claws of other predators. He stayed through the night, through the rain, through the hunger." Her voice shook slightly, but her gaze never wavered. "When the storm ended, he did not leave, and neither did I." Eric's eyes softened, his jaw tightening with unspoken understanding. "You grew together," he said quietly. Lyra nodded, her hand stroking the beast's thick fur. "Yes," she whispered. "I fed him, I healed his wounds. And in return he gave me the one thing no one else gave me: loyalty." The wind howled through the ruins, carrying her words into the night. She looked back at Eric, her eyes sharp again. "They call him a monster. They call me cursed for keeping him. But I know the truth. He's not a monster, he is family." The white fang lifted its head, its glowing eyes fixed on Eric. For a long moment the air was heavy, charged with silence. Then Eric stepped closer, his voice low but strong. "Then he is not a monster to me either," Lyra blinked, surprise flickering across her face. Her heart beat faster, her thoughts unsteady. No one had ever said such words before. No one had ever dared. For so long, she had carried this truth alone, hidden beneath layers of fear and hate. But now, standing before her, was a human who spoke it openly, simply, without hesitation. She felt something stir deep inside her, something she had not felt in years. Not fear, not suspicion, but warmth. And it frightened her more than any enemy ever had. Eric looked at the beast, then back at her, his voice calm. "He saved you when no one else did," he said. "That makes him more than a beast." Lyra's throat tightened, but she forced herself to nod. "Yes," she whispered. "He is my proof that loyalty can exist even in the darkest places." The silence stretched between them, deep and heavy. The moons painted their faces in silver light, the ruins around them whispering of forgotten times. The white fang stood like a shadow between them, its presence vast but no longer threatening. Eric's calm gaze met Lyra's glowing eyes, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a bond, fragile but growing. For the first time, Liara wondered if she was no longer alone. For the first time, she felt that maybe fate had led this human into her path, not to fear her, not to fight her, but to understand. She looked away quickly, her heart beating too fast, her pride pulling her back into silence. But deep inside, she knew the truth. This was no ordinary human, and the story of her beast was no longer hers to carry alone. Far above, the stars shone bright, the universe, vast and endless. But on this night, in the ruins under the moons, Lyra's world had changed. Her secret had been spoken aloud, her bond with her beast had been understood, and her path had crossed with someone who might change everything. The market had returned to its noise, but the whispers followed Liara and Eric as shadows. People scattered when they passed, their eyes wide, their voices hushed. Lyra's beast padded beside her, its claws clicking against the metal ground, its glowing eyes watching everything. But Eric did not fall back. He walked at her side, steady and unafraid, and that unsettled her more than the fear of the crowd. She had seen brave soldiers before, men who boasted of their courage, mercenaries who claimed they had no fear. All of them broke the moment the beast growled, but Eric had not broken, not even once. That made him dangerous, or perhaps it made him something else. Liara stopped at the edge of the colony walls, the sun's burning low above the horizon. The air was heavy, filled with dust and heat. She turned sharply to face him, her glowing eyes narrowing. "You are not like the others," she said, her voice low. "You look at him and you do not tremble." Eric gave a small shrug, his expression calm. "Maybe because I see more than what they see." Her lips curved into the faintest smile, though it did not reach her eyes. "You claim to see," she said, her tone sharp. "But words are cheap, human." Eric tilted his head, his hand resting lightly on his belt. "Then test me," he said simply. The beast growled at those words, a deep rumble that shook the ground. The sound made the guards nearby stumble back. But Eric stood firm. Liara studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, her decision made. "Very well," she said. "Prove your courage." She led him to the outskirts of the colony, where broken rocks rose like jagged teeth, and the wind howled through the cracks. The sky burned red, the sun's dipping lower, shadows stretching long and sharp. Her beast followed silently, its tail swaying like a living weapon. Eric kept pace, his eyes sharp, his steps steady. He did not ask questions, and that, too, impressed her. At last she stopped in a clearing between the rocks, the air heavy with silence. She turned, her hand brushing against the beast's thick fur. "He has torn soldiers apart with a single strike," she said coldly. "He has crushed armored hunters and scattered raiders like insects." Her eyes glowed brighter as she looked at Eric. "Stand before him and show me if your courage is truth or a mask." The beast moved forward, its massive form looming like a mountain, its icy eyes locked on Eric, its fangs flashing in the fading light. The ground seemed to tremble under its weight. Eric stood firm, his breath steady, his gaze unyielding. He raised no weapon, drew no blade. He simply stood, his hands open at his sides. The beast let out a roar that split the air, a sound so powerful the rocks echoed. Even Liara felt the vibration in her chest, yet Eric did not flinch. He held his ground, his eyes never leaving the beast's glowing gaze. Seconds stretched like hours, the storm of tension thick and suffocating. The beast lunged forward, its claws striking the ground inches. From his feet, dust exploded into the air, the sound like thunder. The crowd that had followed from the colony gasped, some screaming, others fleeing. But Eric stood his ground. He did not move, he did not fall. He looked straight into the beast's eyes and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I am not your enemy." The words hung in the air, soft but unbroken. The beast's growl deepened, its hot breath blowing against him. For a moment it seemed ready to strike, ready to tear him apart. But then, slowly, it lowered its head. Its icy eyes blinked, and it stood still, not in defeat, not in weakness, but in recognition. Lyra's eyes widened, shock flashing across her face. Never before had her beast spared anyone. Never before had it bowed its head to another. She felt her chest tighten, her thoughts whirl. How could this human command such respect without force, without fear, without even lifting a weapon? The crowd whispered from the distance, their fear. Turning to awe, some called Eric blessed, others cursed, but Lyra said nothing. She stepped closer, her voice low. "You do not understand what you have done," she whispered. Eric looked at her calmly, his lips curving into the faintest smile. "Maybe not," he admitted, "but maybe you do." The beast rumbled softly, no longer with rage but with a strange calm. It stood between them like a guardian, no longer separating but connecting. Lyra's hand rested on its thick fur, her eyes still locked on Eric. For the first time in her life, she felt her certainty waver. For the first time. She wondered if destiny had placed this human in her path for a reason. The wind howled through the rocks, the suns dipped below the horizon. Shadows swallowed the land, but in that fading light, something new was born, a bond not yet spoken, a respect not yet admitted. Lyra's beast had accepted the human, and that meant her world would never be the same again. The crowd still whispered in disbelief, their voices hushed and trembling. They could not understand how the human had touched the beast and survived. Children clung to their parents. Merchants closed their stalls, guards tightened their grips on their weapons, but the man did not look at them. He looked only at Lyra. His gaze was steady, sharp but not hostile. His armor was scratched and dented, showing he had seen many battles. His hands were strong but calm, no tremor of fear, no sign of hesitation. He stood before the alien girl and her beast as though this was just another day. Lyra felt a strange pull in her chest. For so long she had lived surrounded by fear. Everywhere she went, the world cowered. Her name whispered with dread. Her beast was her shield and her curse, both protecting her and isolating her. But here was a man who did not cower. Here was a man who looked at her without trembling. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice low, her eyes locked onto his. The human gave a faint smile, though his eyes carried the weight of war. "My name is Eric," he answered simply. No titles, no boasting, just a name. Lyra studied him, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. Most men would shout their rank, their victories, their strength. But he spoke with simplicity, like a warrior who had nothing to prove. Her beast shifted beside her, its glowing eyes watching him carefully. It had accepted his touch, at least for now. And that was enough to keep Lyra curious. The silence grew heavy between them. Finally Eric tilted his head, his tone calm but steady. "And who are you?" Lyra almost laughed at the question, a sharp sound that made the crowd flinch. "No one dares ask me that," she said, her lips curving into a faint smile. "They already know, or they think they do." Eric did not step back, did not look away. "Then tell me," he said. Her smile faded. Her eyes glowed brighter. "I am Lyra, the last daughter of the House of Thrine, keeper of the White Fang." At the mention of the title, the crowd murmured in fear. The White Fang was her beast, a creature spoken of in stories to frighten children, a nightmare given flesh. And yet this human still stood unshaken. "You say your people fear you," Eric said, his tone not cruel but curious. "They do not fear me," Lyra corrected, her voice sharp. "They fear him." She nodded to the beast. "And by fearing him, they fear me." The White Fang rumbled low, its tail curling like smoke, its massive form radiating silent power. Eric's eyes softened as he looked at the beast. "Not everything that is feared is evil," he said quietly. The words caught Lyra off guard. No one had ever said such a thing to her before. To everyone else, her companion was a monster, a terror, a curse. But this human spoke as if he saw something else. Her fingers tightened on the hilt of her blade. Not in threat, but in thought. She could not read him, could not understand why he did not flinch. It unsettled her. And yet, it also stirred something deep within her chest. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Not as a monster, not as a warning, but as someone worth speaking to. The crowd began to shift, uneasy with the silence. Some shouted warnings, telling Eric to step back, to run while he still could. Others whispered that he must be mad, cursed, or already doomed. But Eric ignored them, his focus still on her. "You care for him," he said, nodding at the beast. Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Yes," she said firmly. "He is my family." The human nodded. No mockery in his expression. "I can see that," he said, and then, to the shock of everyone watching, he added, "which means he's not a monster." The words struck the air like lightning. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Disbelief painted across every face. No one had ever dared speak such words before. Liara felt her chest tighten, her mind spinning. This man spoke with such calm certainty. As if the truth had been obvious all along, her beast tilted its massive head. Breathing deeply, its icy eyes glowing brighter. For the first time in public, it seemed to relax under the gaze of another. Eric stood tall, steady, as if he and the beast shared some silent understanding. The crowd's fear only grew, but Liara's curiosity deepened. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she studied him. "You do not know what he has done," she whispered. "You do not know what he has taken." Eric's expression hardened, but his voice stayed calm. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I know what I see now." The tension between them grew sharper, heavy like a storm about to break. The market, once lively, was frozen in suspense. Every soul too afraid to speak. Lyra's hand twitched near her blade, her beast's claws scraped against the floor, and yet she did not attack. Instead, she found herself asking a question she never thought she would. "Why are you not afraid?" Eric met her gaze, his eyes steady as stone. "Because fear is not the same as truth," he said. "And sometimes fear blinds us from seeing what stands right in front of us." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. The words echoed inside her mind, stirring emotions she had buried long ago. She had always been feared, always been isolated, always been alone. But this human, this strange, fearless man, had just broken the silence of her world, and deep inside, she felt the first spark of something she did not yet dare name. The market was alive with sound, voices of traders calling, children laughing, and machines humming. But the moment she entered, silence fell. Every eye turned, every voice froze, and fear swept through the crowd like a wave. The alien girl walked slowly, her emerald skin glowing faintly under the pale suns, her dark hair flowing behind her. At her side walked the creature that everyone feared. It was massive, its shoulders higher than any man's head, its fur white with streaks of black that shimmered under the light. Its eyes glowed an icy blue, sharp and wild like frozen fire. Its fangs flashed whenever it opened its jaws, each tooth the size of a dagger. The crowd pulled back, pressing against the walls, hiding behind stalls, some even running away. To them, this was no animal, no pet, but a monster. The alien girl did not look at them. Her name was Lyara, and she had grown used to these reactions everywhere she went. The stares were the same, whispers, fear, and hate. But to her, the beast was not a monster. It was her companion, her guardian, her only friend. When others saw death, she saw loyalty. When others saw terror, she saw love. The beast's claws scraped the metal floor, its tail swaying like a shadow people gasped as it moved, and not a single soul dared to come close, except for one. He stood still near the center of the market, a human soldier in battered armor. His hair was light, his jaw strong, his eyes steady. While everyone else stepped back, he did not move, while others trembled. He looked straight at Liara and her beast. His gaze was calm, not reckless, not mocking, but calm. Liara slowed her steps, her glowing eyes narrowing. Her beast let out a low growl, the sound like thunder rolling through a canyon. The human still did not move. The crowd watched in terror, certain he would be torn apart, but he simply stood, one hand resting casually on his side, as if the beast before him was nothing more than a common animal. No one had ever done this before, not on any world, not in any colony. Everywhere she traveled, people fled or screamed. Soldiers raised weapons, mercenaries offered bounties. But this man did not run, did not fight, did not fear. Lyra's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. Though her eyes stayed sharp, she stopped only a few steps away from him, her beast's hot breath blowing against his chest. The man lifted his hand slowly, the market holding its breath. Lyra tensed, ready to command the beast, ready to strike if he dared attack, but his hand moved gently, carefully, and rested against the beast's fur. The giant creature growled once, a deep rumble shaking the ground. But it did not strike. Instead, its glowing eyes blinked, and it stood still, as if it accepted him. The crowd gasped in disbelief. A man had touched the beast and lived. More than lived, he had done so calmly, without fear, without hesitation. Whispers filled the air, some saying he was mad, others saying he was blessed. But Lyra knew in her heart that something rare had just happened. Her gaze locked onto the human. "Do you not fear death?" she asked quietly, her voice smooth but edged with steel. The man looked back at her, his hand still on the beast's fur. "I fear many things," he said, his voice steady. "But not him." The words struck her deeper than she expected. She had always believed fear was natural. Fear was survival. Everyone feared her beast. Everyone except her. But now, standing in front of her, was a human who dared to stand without trembling. Not because he was foolish, but because he saw something she had longed for someone else to see. He saw the creature not as a monster, but as a being. The silence stretched, heavy and alive. The beast's tail swayed gently, its body relaxed, its sharp eyes still fixed on the man, but no longer burning with threat. The market stayed frozen, too afraid to breathe, too afraid to interrupt, and in that silence Lyra felt something she had not felt in years: curiosity. Who was this human who did not bow to fear? Who was this man who touched her beast as if it were no demon, but a companion? Her world had always been filled with fear, suspicion, and loneliness. But in that single moment, she wondered if her fate was about to change. Lyra tilted her head, studying him closely. Perhaps he was a fool. Perhaps he was strong. Perhaps he was something more. Her beast had accepted him, if only for a moment, and that was enough to make. Her heart beat faster than it should. The human finally pulled his hand back, his expression calm, his eyes never leaving hers. The silence broke as the market breathed again, voices whispering, children crying, guards gripping weapons nervously, but Lyra did not hear them. Her focus was only on the man before her, the one who stood when all others ran, the one who looked at her beast without fear. She did not know it yet, but this meeting was the spark of something far greater. For the first time in her life, she had met someone who did not fear her shadow, and in the depths of her heart, she felt the storm of destiny begin.